Hey guys, my guest tonight, Donna Andersen, learned firsthand what it was like living with a sociopath. And boy, does she have a story to tell. In addition, she's going to give some advice on how you can avoid having a similar story. See you in about 5 minutes. Grab your popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust, turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Good. Whoa, already starting off with a bang. Look at that, the internet. Good afternoon, everybody. How's everybody doing today? Probably better than my internet. Just a word of warning, it's Monday, it's a holiday, and everybody and their brother has Xfinity in my neighborhood. So I'm just giving you a heads up that we may, go, and we may be dropping out off and on. So it's already done that a couple of times since I started the show. So that's life in this neighborhood. It's life, So anyway, maybe someday I'll be able to get AT&T back. Anyway, welcome everybody, and my name is Charlotte, and I'm going to be your host for the next hour. I'm also the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team based out of Sacramento, California. We are 45 strong up and down the state of California, which means if you have a paranormal issue or you think you might have a paranormal issue, we can get to you. It might take us a while because the state's a big state. It's huge. So, but we can get to you, and even if we can't physically get to you, I have mediums on staff who can talk with you remotely about what's going on. Okay? You can see into your house and all that stuff. Kind of creepy, but they can. We've got a great show lined up for you. We have had this lady on before, and it's been very, very, very nice to have her on and learn from her, Donna Andersen. And excuse me, I had a frog in my throat there for a second. And it's a very educational thing because this goes on all the time. This thing, you fall in love with somebody, and then after everything's fine, even during your relationship with them, even during that, let's go out, have a date, have pizza. That's all fine and dandy. The minute you get that ring on your finger, boom, okay? It's like Jekyll and Hyde. So, the personality changes and you start noticing stuff. This is what happened to Donna Andersen. And so she's going to tell us her story. And not only that, in her time now, what she does is she helps other people who might be involved in a similar situation. So it's going to be interesting to hear what tips she has for folks as well. Okay, that said, if you're watching from Facebook today and you haven't done it already, be sure to follow the show, okay? And you can either be on my Facebook page with my name, or you can follow all the California Haunts Facebook page or whatever page you're on Facebook. But be sure to do that, and be sure to like the show. Show me some love. I like love. I like likes, okay? If you're watching from YouTube, I'm going to point. Let's see. There we go. First try, kind of. There's a little ghost in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, and he's got a magnifying glass and a Sherlock Holmes hat on. And if you haven't done so already and you like what you hear today and what you see today, please be sure to click on him, and that'll subscribe you to our videos. We have 530 videos over there, all different topics. I am a journalist. So although I enjoy paranormal topics because I'm a ghost hunter as well, I also like topics like what we're going to do today. I was a crime courts reporter for 6 years. I like bringing stuff out, and I like helping people doing things that matter. And this, in a story, in a show like this, really, really matters. It really matters. So if you look through all those videos as well, I think you'll find something that you like because there's a lot of different things on there, a lot of different topics. Okay? If you're watching from Twitch, hit that like button and come on over to wherever you want to go to follow. Same thing with TikTok. We're not live on TikTok, but for the people that have followed me over from my TikTok account, be sure to subscribe to YouTube so you can get my videos, right? And hit that like button. Tell me what you think. We're open for conversation. See, the back says, come join the conversation. That's what this is about. So you guys can ask questions of my guest as well, not just me. Okay? It's all fun. It's like watching a regular talk show, only, we're here. We're virtual. Okay. Anyway, I already gave a nice intro. I'm going to let her tell you her story because her story she can tell her story more intriguing than I can tell her story. Believe me. And me, you know how I am. At least she's got a name I don't screw up, right? I'm good with screwing up names every time. Tomorrow's guest, you'll see. But let's get on with it, and let's have Donna tell her story. I think Donna's one of the greatest people around. Here we go.
Hi, everybody, and hi, Charlotte. Thank you so much for inviting me to your show again. I think we did this last year when my most recent book came out. And for those of you who may have missed that, I'm Donna Andersen, author of lovefraud.com. And my most recent book is called Senior Sociopaths: How to Recognize and Escape Lifelong Abusers. Ah, there it is. There's the picture. So that came out last year. I've gotten great feedback. A lot of people have found it to be helpful. And the reason that I wrote this book is because I married one of these folks. The guy turned out to be a complete con artist. He took $250,000 from me.
Wow.
He cheated with 6 different women during our 2.5-year relationship. He had a child with one of those women. And then 10 days after I left him, not 10 days after we divorced, 10 days after I left him, he married the mother of the child, which was the second time he committed bigamy. So yeah, so it just gets wilder and wilder, everything that went on. And as you can imagine, I was very confused by this situation. And I was talking to my therapist and explaining all the different things that he did. And she says, he sounds like a sociopath. And I'm like, sociopath? What's that? So I started to research it. Sure enough, he fit the profile. And I realized that I had a story to tell. And so I launched Love Fraud back in 2005. I have a bunch of books that have come out. The first one tells my whole story, and then I have other helpful books. And I'm still out there educating people about all these disordered folks who live among us.
Let me ask you this. I know we've talked about this before, obviously, because you were on before, but for the people the newer people, since I have more subscribers now, they're out there. I know they're out there. What were the signs? Okay, did you notice right away as you were dating him? Like I kind of went off on my own tangent at the beginning of the show. Did you notice while you were dating him that he had some weird tendencies?
When I met this man, he seemed to be the person I've been waiting for all my life.
Mm-hmm.
And believe it or not, that ends up being one of the warning signs, which I found out later. But he was magnetic. He was charismatic. He always knew what to say. He never missed a beat. And he came along and swept me off my feet. And he presented himself to be an entrepreneur. He claimed that he was a Hollywood script writer and had previously had an advertising business. And I was in the advertising business. So that was a point that we had in common. He also claimed to be a military veteran. He told me that he served in Vietnam and won medals for his bravery. In fact, I mean, I wasn't the only person that he told that. He actually joined the local Vietnam Veterans Association, and it was so convincing that they invited him to be the keynote speaker at a Veterans Day ceremony. He was never in the military. He made all this stuff up, and he made a lot of things up. But at the time, he was focusing on me and telling me how much he loved me and that I was the woman he'd been waiting for all his life, and talking about this wonderful future that we're going to have. And so obviously I didn't know that he was lying. I didn't know he was lying about his military history. I mean, he presented me with documentation, which is also something sociopaths do. So there were a lot of things that eventually I caught on that his stories would change and that things were happening. And then, of course, the idea that he was taking money from me, but he didn't say he was taking money from me. He said, we were investing in our future together and we were investing in the business opportunity. So there were things that went on that now looking back, I understand were warning signs. But at the time, I didn't know. And this is very common because my second book actually is called Red Flags of Love Fraud, 10 Signs You're Dating a Sociopath. And with that book, this is exactly what I did. I gathered data on what people experienced. And from all the data that I collected, that's how I came up with the 10 signs of what the warning signs are. But typically, people usually see things that you're going like, huh, what? But they don't know what it means.
Mm-hmm.
And so consequently, you don't realize that you're involved with an exploiter or a predator because you don't know what the warning signs are.
Well, it's that, or if you do notice something odd and you mention it, they sweet talk their way out of it, right?
Yes, yes, yes. They are experts at turning things around and making you apologize because they did something bad to you. I mean, that happens all the time. It's like they do something rude and they blow off a date or something like that, and you complain because they blow off a date, and they talk and talk and talk, and all of a sudden you're the one apologizing for complaining that they blew off the date. And this is just it's just a typical sociopathic playbook. That's what they do all the time, is they turn things around so that you feel bad for their bad behavior.
Hmm. Hmm. So you dated this gentleman, you married him,
Yes.
and then what did you notice? Then obviously everything started to change. After you married him, and what like you say, you've got 10 signs. What are those 10 signs?
Okay. Well, the warning signs, which as I said, I did not recognize that they were warning signs in the beginning. But the first one is charisma and charm. Exactly. What this guy presented himself to be. He was just so magnetic and always knew what to say, and was never at a loss for words. Well, like 90% of the people who get involved with sociopaths, that's what they report. So this is actually the number one sign that somebody may have a personality disorder. And the next thing is love bombing, because what they do is they shower you with attention and affection. They tell you how wonderful you are, which he did to me. So that's the next one. And then another one that you see early is sexual magnetism. If you feel like your physical relationship is off the charts, well, it could be because they have excess testosterone. And then another thing that happens is what I call the pity play. They want to make you feel sorry for them. And my ex did that to me. I mean, on our first date, when we first met, he's telling me about his wife who had passed away. And he's like, but I think, with you, I could have a chance to love again, and just really milked it. And so those are like the top four.
Yeah.
Now the problem is those sound like pretty good qualities. I mean, who doesn't want to be involved with a guy who's charismatic and charming and sexy and thinks you're wonderful? So you have to look at the whole package. Now, another thing that happens is that they tend to blame other people for everything that goes wrong in their life. And this is a key one, because this is one that you will see even while they're being charming and showering you with affection. They'll complain about their ex or their boss, or, and all this other stuff. So it's important that one is important. Another thing is that they lie. I mean, this is all sociopaths lie. Of course, the problem is you don't know that they're lying, until later on. So that's why the blaming is so important, because you can see that one. And then there's a few others. There's they often have intense eye contact, which is actually the only physical sign that someone may be a sociopath. They may like stare at you like a predator, which is what they're doing. Or they can have these dead eyes. Some people call them shark eyes, where it looks like there's nobody home inside. There's also the Jekyll and Hyde personality, which you mentioned previously. One minute they love you, the next minute they hate you, and you don't know what happened. And so there's 10 of these signs, and you really kind of need to see all of them, because not everybody who's charming is a sociopath.
Right.
So you don't want to write somebody off, just because they're charming. But if you start to see that they're, charming and sexy, and oh yeah, they're blaming everybody, and now I catch you in lies, then you have to start paying attention.
And isn't that Jekyll and Hyde part of the personality done to keep you off balance?
Well, everything they do is to keep you off
Right.
balance.
But that
But
especially, I
yes,
mean, one minute they're nice, next minute, so you don't know which way to go, how to talk to them or nothing, because you don't want to trigger whatever makes them angry or whatever, or any of that.
exactly. And so there definitely have this Jekyll and Hyde thing. It's so inborn, or part of their personality, that I'm not sure that they're doing that on purpose. I mean, that's just part of who they are. But it's shocking, because they can be, just so wonderful, and then all of a sudden they flip. And it's
Mhm.
like, whoa, where did that come from? So
Mhm.
that actually is a warning sign. If you're, having this involvement with somebody, and then all of a sudden he does something, you go, whoa, where did that come from? So,
Mhm.
I mean, that's important, because it could be what we call the mask slipping. because what they do is essentially they run a charade. As far as if they're trying to target you to reel you in, and they can keep the charade going for a long time. And with every, I mean, I've had people tell me. I remember one case in particular. This woman told me that they dated for 4 years. Now, I mean, I didn't do that. I got swept off my feet, got married much too quickly, which often happens. But this woman, they dated for 4 years. He was perfect for 4 years, and then as soon as they got married, boom, changes, totally different.
Wow. Sounds about right. Um, he managed to get a lot of money out of you, and how did he do that? How was he able to do that? And is your family? I mean, because obviously you have family.
Yeah, I have
Did
family.
they notice anything about him, or try to warn you about him?
Sort of, but I didn't tell them everything that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's typical, because I mean, one of the things that he did was he moved quickly to hook up, and that's another sign that they want to get their claws into you before you escape.
Mm-hmm.
And so and the way he told me that I mean, he presented the information that you really should invest in this because it's going to make a lot of money and it'll be good for your portfolio. So this is the story that he gave me, and then it was, can you put things on your credit card and things and the financing is going to come through next month. I'll have all the money and as soon as the card comes in, we'll pay it off. Well, that never happened,
Mm-hmm.
but he talked a good game. But plus what had happened, of course, was that he had already proposed to me, and I thought this man loved me and that we were in this together and that, we're working to support each other. And in all honesty, at the time, I was pleased that I was able to contribute. And I didn't get the sense that, that it was, I was the cash cow, which is essentially what I turned out to be. So it's hard. It's really hard in the beginning because no, he never asked me for money to go buy something. Well, he'd asked, even when he asked me for money to buy something, it was to upgrade his computer, or something that he needed for the business. So I didn't know, although I found out later that he was also taking some of this money and entertaining other women, which I found out later on. But I never knew about that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what was the straw that broke that broke the camel's back, pretty much?
Well, he kept coming up with all these business plans. Many of them did not work, but one of them actually did start to work. And what that was, and of course, this was back in 1997, 98, when the Titanic movie came out, which was such a phenomenon. So he came up with the idea, and actually he didn't do it by himself. There was another man who was local here who is a respected businessman, and they're talking and they're saying, we could do a Titanic exhibition. And so he had a partner. I mean, I wasn't the only one. This other man who's he's good. And he was a casino marketing executive and he's very well known. And so they actually found investors. This small group was planning to put $1 million into the exhibition, and so it starts coming along. And it actually started, and I was working on building this Titanic exhibition. I was doing all the display materials, and then the investors pulled out, and then the whole show collapsed. So but we had acquired all these artifacts, Titanic artifacts. So we had all these materials. So it was like, well, if they could find another location to put the show in, then we can go ahead and launch it. So he told me that he had a deal to do it in a dinner theater down in Orlando, Florida. I'm in New Jersey. And so he had us move down to Orlando to do this dinner show, and telling me that, February 17th, that's the day we're going to launch. And, I need more information because I'm, trying to get this show together. And I call the dinner theater, and I'm like, I wanted to ask some questions. And the lady's like, Titanic? Boy, I haven't heard anything about that in ages. And I'm like, what? Come to find out, there was no deal. Okay. He dragged me 1,000 miles down to Florida, essentially, telling me that he had a deal when there was no deal. And of course, by this point, I'm already broke. I had run out of money. So I was like, oh my God. But then he tells me that he has a chance to sell our artifacts to this other entertainment company. And I'm like, yes, please, let's do it. Sell all this stuff, put it out of its misery. Let's go. So I took like the last $200 on my credit card to buy him a plane ticket to fly from Orlando back to Atlantic City. He was going to go on to New York to do this deal. And on the way to the airport, we have an argument, because we always argued on the way to the airport. And so I had asked him, like, where were some rings? I had all these rings that they were missing out of my jewelry box. And he says, well, I put them in the lockbox. Well, the reason I was looking for them was because by this point I was so broke that I was thinking of pawning them, to try and get some money to buy groceries. So he tells me they're in this lockbox. And I get the key. I drop him at the airport. He slams the trunk down, walks away, and I come back to our apartment. And because we had moved down to Orlando, and I find the lockbox, I find a key, I open it up, and in this lockbox I find all these photographs of him with a baby. So, and then I find the birth certificate indicating that he's the father of the baby that was conceived and born during our marriage. And I'm like, oh my God. So actually, my first reaction to that was, now I can leave, because before that I was like, what kind of wife leaves her husband because the business plans aren't working out? Because I didn't know he was taking the money from me. All I knew was that, I was going into debt and things weren't working. But now he's cheating on me. He's had a child with another woman. I'm out of here. So that was the final straw.
Wow. And you're not the only woman this has happened to. I mean, there's so many women that, or it's either happened to, or they're going through this. Correct?
Yeah. Well, in my case, I had, 3 other women plus the parents of the wife before me who died testified at my divorce. So, I mean, he was doing it to multiple people while married to me. So yeah, I mean, and yes, it's far more common than people realize. Especially back then. I think there's more awareness now. I mean, this was like, 20 some years ago. God, maybe more than that. But anyway, nobody was talking about it at the time. Nobody was talking about narcissists. No, and in fact, when I met him, there was no Google, so you couldn't look anybody up. But there is more awareness now, but still it's going on. In fact, actually, now there's a big problem with these online dating, with all these people in Nigeria that are just running romance scams.
Yep.
And that one always mystified me for a while, because at least I was with this guy.
Sure.
I mean, I was married to him, and I'm like, how in the world do you send all this money to people that you never met? And there's an awful lot of psychological manipulation that goes on in these situations. And I mean, this is what I learned, after launching Love Fraud and talking to more people and doing more research and everything. And so that's what happens. It is possible to have feelings for somebody that you've never met. And this is what these con artists do. They figure out a way to draw you in emotionally and keep you off balance. And they call it under the ether. They put you under the ether. And the ether means that you're emotionally excited. Yeah. And it could be emotionally excited positive, like you think you're falling in love, or negative, like they tell you that your grandchild's been kidnapped or something like that. Either one works. But if they get you emotionally worked up, you're less likely to think critically about what the request is. And that's how people get scammed.
I think too, there's a lot of lonely people out there.
Yes.
And they spend all their time online. I mean, obviously, look how big the online crowd is. I mean, I'm over on TikTok with this site. Plus, I'm following other people on TikTok, like even these, and God bless them, they're my good friends now. A lot of the Disney TikTokers, and there are so many people that follow them from sun up to sundown. And it's just people that can't get out, and this is their way of having an outlet and stuff. So I can understand, like, with the online love scams, how that goes.
Yeah. And in fact, it's a big problem, especially I've heard all kinds of problems out of Australia, where all these pensioners are spending all their money and sending it to people in Nigeria or Malaysia. In some of these countries, particularly, I know it goes on in Nigeria, and I think Malaysia is the other one, or someplace else in Asia. I mean, they actually run it like a boiler room operation. All these people come in and they do a shift where all they're doing is searching the internet, trying to find people, who might be vulnerable, and they try and strike up these relationships until they figure out the person is, ready, primed to be accosted, essentially, and ask for money. So, I mean, it's like, it's a big business in some of these countries.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Let's talk about your book, Seniors. Tell me a little bit about how you got to. Well, obviously you have other books out, on love fraud. So obviously this was like a natural step to take. So tell me about your book.
Yes. So the Senior Sociopath book, the reason that I wrote that is, as I learned about psychopathy and these personality disorders, especially like antisocial personality disorder and psychopathy, the general consensus in the mental health field is that people who have particularly antisocial personality disorder burn out in their 40s, and they engage in less antisocial behavior. I mean, this is actually published in multiple psychiatry textbooks. It says that they tend to, just, not engage in as much bad behavior, once they get into their 40s. And so I'm hearing this, and I'm like, well, my ex was 55 when I met him. Okay. And so, he's definitely pulled this scam when, at that age. Plus, after I left him, he scammed more women. Okay. So this guy, wasn't calming down. And I heard the same thing from plenty of other people. At this point, I've got well over 10,000 cases, of people who have told me their stories, many of whom are, middle-aged people. And there's, whoever they're involved with is, 40, 50, 60, 70 years old and still doing all this bad behavior. So I wanted to document it and find out, exactly what was going on. So I did a survey, because I've done multiple surveys for love fraud. And this one had about 2,400 responses. There were two parts to the survey, so 2,400 people, which is a good sized data set. And I asked about them. I asked them to talk about their experiences with people who were over the age of 50, who they believed were personality disordered. And I picked 50 because if they're burning out by 40, by 50 they should be pretty well calmed down. That was the rationale for that. And so essentially, they don't. All these people were telling me that, the behavior was like really, really bad. In fact, there were two key questions to the survey. And there's like 90 some questions, but there were two that were really important. The first question was, did you know this person both before and after the age of 50? And about 40 to 50% of people said yes, because I mean, it wasn't just limited to romantic relationships. People were talking about their parents, their children, their siblings, other family members, work colleagues. So we had a lot of different types of relationships. So about 40%, maybe a little more, said that they knew the person both before and after age 50. So then I asked, did this person after the age of 50 engage in more antisocial behavior, less antisocial behavior, or like none at all? Did they mellow out, or did it get worse? 91% of people reported that the sociopath's behavior was just as bad or worse after the age of 50. So, I mean, this is dramatic evidence that, they simply do not get better. Right. And, so in the book, I do talk about, I break it up into the different types of relationships. So there's a chapter about people who date, someone who's over the age of 50 and disordered, marriages. Then we talk about parents, other family members, work colleagues, criminals. I have a whole chapter on criminals and everything. And so it's a mix of the data plus lots and lots of stories, people who shared with me their stories of what actually happened. So you end up getting a really good perspective and a good understanding of how it happens and how these people affect everyone around them for their entire lives.
Well, I was going to say, is there a common thread that you see with these people?
Once they are an adult And if they could be diagnosed with antisocial, narcissistic, borderline, histrionic, or psychopathic personality disorder, there is no rehabilitation. Okay. I mean, they actually may not engage in as much criminal behavior. And this is where this myth came from, because if you look at criminal behavior, it absolutely does decline as people get older. You can look at the crime and arrest statistics and see that fewer people. I mean, the peak is in the early 20s, and from then on, it goes down. So, but the theme is that even if they stop being like quite as violent or engaging in crime or anything like that, they don't get better. They never learn how to love. They never get a heart. And so the type of manipulation may be not as bad as it used to be, but they're still manipulating, they're still exploiting. So the point is that they do not get better. And this is important. I mean, I talk to a lot of people who are, involved in marriages 20, 30, 40 years, with somebody who's disordered. And, they keep saying, oh, well, maybe he'll finally calm down.
Right.
It's not going to happen. And I should point out that there are both male and female sociopaths, and it's the same thing, that neither one of them gets any better.
As far as seniors go, when I think of I'm in my 50s. I don't like to admit it.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about that.
I don't think of myself as a senior yet. When I think of seniors, I think of my mother and father. My sister's like, I'm not going to go there. 70 and higher. I don't want to get yelled at by my sister. So I mean, it's hard to picture somebody in their 70s doing this.
Okay, what they do is that they're just impossible to be with. They become very demanding, and they're still, I mean, depending on how much they still have their wits about them, and plenty of people do at that age. I mean, they're still running little games, they're still manipulative, they're still demanding, they're still pitting one child against the other, and making up stories. Sometimes they are still violent, and actually sometimes they are still engaging in criminal behavior. I mean, I did collect data on that. And like, for example, one of the questions was, did this person get arrested and convicted of criminal behavior? And about 13% said yes. But another question was, did they get away with criminal behavior? And 38% said yes. So they can get smarter, that they're not dumb enough to assault a cop, but they can still be shoplifting or, something along those lines.
And then the reports that you gathered, how many, like we just got 13% got arrested, but how many women or men lost a lot of money over it? I mean, kind of like what you went through.
Oh, it's a lot. I probably about half or maybe more of the people that I interviewed lost money. And it could be family members. I mean, there are some who take advantage of their kids, once their kids are adults. There's brothers and sisters who are exploitative. I think it was probably about half of people recorded losing money. And as I said, if you were married to the person, it was worse. Those who were married, they tended to lose more money. But people lost money, because of their disordered parents, their disordered kids, their disordered siblings, or business investments. I have a chapter on, work colleagues and business associates. People lost money because of that. So I would say about half people lost money. And sometimes it was a lot. I mean, there were people who lost, more than I did, $500,000, $1 million, something like that. So yes, a lot of people lose money.
And I hate to say this to not sound, sympathetic, but I remember when my grandfather was in his 90s, and I remember my dad mentioning this, and I used to see it all the time myself. When we would take him with us somewhere, there were always more women than there were men.
Yes.
And so I can see where there would be an opportunity for the males to be that way, because they have their pick of women.
Yes, this is true, and that does happen. But believe it or not, I also have a couple stories in this book about the disordered women, who essentially are out, shopping for widowers. And I mean, I've got one story about this woman. she was in a senior housing place, and there was this other couple who were living there, and the wife died, and so the husband was still in the senior housing place. Well,
Yes.
she latched onto him like in 10 minutes, and became very controlling. Their daughter, the guy's daughter, arranged for a company to make sure that he takes his pills. Apparently they have pill people, they're called, and they come around every day and make sure that he takes his medication. Well, the woman would scream at them, for coming in to take the pills, and they threatened to drop him as a client because the girlfriend was so abusive. And they finally had to actually move their father out of that senior housing place into another one to get him away from her. And because she would make him take him. I mean, the place served every meal, and she would keep making him take her out to dinner and out to lunch and do the shopping and take her to her appointments. So what was happening was that he was missing his appointments, but taking her to all of hers. And
Mhm.
it just became, the guy was totally under her control.
That makes sense. I remember going back to my grandfather. I remember him talking about, after his wife after my grandmother had passed away, and how the neighborhood women, were trying to get their hooks in. And then he would even
Mhm.
laugh, like I said, when we took him to parks or took him to music parks or whatever, all the women would come towards him and he said, "Look, they're all trying to get their hooks in me."
Yes.
So he was pretty much aware of that
Yes.
factor.
Yes.
It's fascinating when
Yeah.
you think about this, and it's sad in a lot of ways too, because you hit a certain age, and I'm not saying desperate, but you want that companionship, but there's still these people out there that will come in and try to get, especially if you're well off or you look well off. Good luck, because you got to be careful about who you bring into your life.
Yeah, and I mean, certainly there are plenty of older women who are fine, and who are just looking for companionship.
Right.
But there are those who are, gold diggers and worse.
Mhm. 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 So, in the people that you talk to, what was one of the worst stories that you heard?
Oh gosh. I mean, there are so many. What I did was I started each chapter with a particular story that I told at length. And I guess probably the worst one was the one on the story about the chapter about the parents, people who are describing their sociopathic parents. And this story is unbelievable because the family was very wealthy, and they had their oldest daughter was born with kind of like a birth defect, in that she was brilliant, but she didn't have good social skills. Maybe she was on autism, but this was a long time ago. They weren't talking about that. So the family decided they didn't want to have any more biological children, so they adopted a boy and then they adopted a girl.
Mhm.
And the family's wealth came from the mother's side. I mean, apparently her family came in on the Mayflower or something like that. They've been wealthy forever. The father turned out to be a complete psychopath, and he got the mother under his control. And she, I mean, we're talking millions, millions of dollars. And what he would do is, I mean, it was just one story after another of how he controlled her and took advantage of her money and would like donate it because he wanted to be known as a philanthropist.
Mhm.
But in the meantime, he's bad mouthing the son, and saying and would do things like say that the son couldn't bring his kids to the family cottage unless he paid back the loan. But and then he would the son asks, are we going to have an 80th birthday party for mom? And they say no. Well, there is a party, so the son doesn't show up because nobody tells him about it, so now he's the black sheep for this. And then the other daughter, the one who had the disability, he like possibly allowed her to die.
Mhm.
So it was just awful, and most of it was simply to entertain himself. It's not like he needed the money or anything because he was taking it all from the wife.
Right.
But I mean, it was just the cold and calculated nature of how he treated his family was simply unbelievable.
It's just so fascinating to me that people, and I don't want to say people are dumb, because I mean, I've known some sociopaths. I can honestly
Mhm.
say that in my lifetime. I've gotten away from them, but I've known them. And it's just fascinating to me that, like, well, you see it all the time. I mean, like going back to these people online that from Nigeria and going back and forth. Like even when you watch, forgive me, people, for saying Dr. Phil, but when you see these guys, these people on Dr. Phil, and when he goes after these people overseas, the women don't want to believe anyway.
Right.
So the family, it's amazing to me that the families can't, convince these seniors or whoever that these people aren't good for them. But you can, in a way, I can understand why too, because love is, as they say, like the song says, love is blind.
It's more than that. It's more about the mind control
Hmm.
strategies that the sociopaths use. I mean, that's essentially what's going on is mind control. And there's a lot of manipulation that goes on. And the other thing that happens is that people get trauma bonded to the perpetrator. And
Yep.
a trauma bond, by definition, is an attachment to somebody who's destructive to you.
Hmm.
And the thing is, there's all this emotional stuff that goes on, and it can be very difficult to recognize what's going on and to undo it. And essentially, it's the same thing that happens in cults, because in my view, cult leaders are sociopaths on steroids.
Right.
And so sociopaths use all the same techniques that cult leaders do, which the term love bombing, I mean, that originally came from Sung Young Moon, the Unitarian guy, and he's the one that started it, because this is what they do. That's how they get people into the cult. They shower them with attention. You're welcome here. You're come join us. We love you. You'll be happy. And this is exactly what sociopaths do.
Hmm.
So these techniques, and I mean, sociopaths, as far as I know, like, don't go to school for this, so they just kind of figure it out. But they're very, very powerful brain techniques, and people end up getting in these trauma situations, and that's what makes it so difficult to get out of them.
You know that, can you tell me the difference for people that are out there? Because I know there's a lot of talk about narcissists and sociopaths. What are the differences between a sociopath and a narcissist?
Okay, well, let me explain how I use it on love fraud.
Okay.
The term sociopath is no longer an official clinical diagnosis for anything.
Hmm.
Okay, I mean, it used to be, but it isn't any longer. And this gets kind of complicated, which is why I use the term sociopath. I use the term sociopath as an umbrella term for all of the personality disorders that are exploitative and manipulative. And so this includes, in the DSM-5, which is the Bible essentially for psychiatrists, there's a category called cluster B personality disorders. And these are the disorders where there's all this emotion going on, and they're dramatic, and things like that. So the cluster B personality disorders are antisocial, narcissistic, borderline, and histrionic personality disorders. And then there's psychopathy, which is similar but not precisely the same as antisocial personality disorder. And the only reason that it's considered different is because the mental health professionals have not agreed on what the terminology is supposed to be. They've got the university researchers use the term psychopath, and all the clinicians used cluster B and all those disorders. And so it's like this big political battle. So it's a mess, and this is why we're all confused. I mean, if these professionals can't figure it out, what hope do the rest of us have?
Right.
So from my point of view, we need to know that they're all out there, because there is a lot of overlap among these disorders. Like, for example, narcissism is a component of antisocial personality disorder.
Hmm.
So and and people can have part of this and part of that. So it all becomes very confusing. And I want to educate people to be aware that there are people out there who are fundamentally different from the rest of us.
Hmm.
And what they have in common is that they do not have the ability to authentically love.
Hmm.
Okay, so this is the bottom line for these disorders. And it's just, I want to talk about them in general. So I'm using the term sociopath, and actually I am using the term as it was originally designed to be used, because when the word sociopath was coined back in 1930, it meant anything deviant in social relationships. So that's exactly what we're talking about. But it became associated with antisocial personality disorder. So now people tell me I don't know what I'm talking about, and I'm using the wrong terminology and all this other stuff. But there's an awful lot of overlap among these disorders, and what we need to know is that there are people out there who are fundamentally different from the rest of us. What they do is they take advantage of us and exploit us, and it doesn't matter what the diagnosis is. We need to get them out of our lives.
Absolutely. I think what you're talking about too, with it all being umbrellaed. I remember Ted Bundy was supposed to be a sociopath. I think that's why they started to make the changes, because people like him were being classified under there too. And I think that's why there was the big push to separate that.
Well, it was actually before that, because
Okay.
I think Bundy was like in the 70s or 80s or something like that. Well, this change was made in the 60s.
Okay.
It's fine. So, but it's just messy. It's just all these people that are arguing about the precise diagnosis, and the thing is, they're all bad. Okay, we need to be aware of all of them. So that's why I like to talk about it generally.
Absolutely. So after it happened to you, you turned it into something good, because it's always good to take something bad and turn it into something good. So what got you? I mean, obviously your experience to write it down was very good for you. To get all that down on paper. Because I mean that helps me. But you took it even farther, right? Because you're out helping people, literally helping people.
Yes, and I actually didn't know that would happen. I mean, my first goal was to warn people about the con artists that live among us, because that's what happened to me. And as I launched Love Fraud, which was in 2005, so it's been quite a while since I launched it, almost 20 years. That's when I started learning. I started learning, from all the people who are writing to me about their stories, and not all sociopaths engage in financial fraud. Like I hear these stories of people who married them, and some sociopaths, all they want to do is torment the spouse. I mean, they got a job, they're making money, but they want to, tear their other partner down. So I started getting all this information, all these stories, and it was far bigger than I thought it would be. So essentially, I did educate myself as far as more about the terminology and the symptoms and things like that. So now, Love Fraud, we have a bunch of options for folks if you're looking for information. The website itself has like 4,000 stories, where you can learn more about the sociopaths. And there's also a lot of people who have told their stories, which folks find to be pretty helpful, because they start to see that their own situation in some of these stories. We also have webinars. I think we've got about 50 of them now, different webinars, given by myself plus other professionals who are explaining, what these disorders are about, and how to recover from them. We have one coming up next month, being presented by a police officer, a retired police officer from New York, and she's going to talk about how to report your abuser's crimes so the police take you seriously, because that's another thing that happens, is they can't do that. And plus, I also offer personal consultations, and I've just started offering what I call deep emotional release, which is where I help people to release the emotional wounds of these experiences, because that's where the healing is. The healing is being able to get the emotional pain out of your system.
You just hit on something that I found really interesting, a trigger. The police. Why is it the police won't take you seriously?
Well, because anytime, if you're looking at a romantic situation, for example, or a marriage, usually it's he said, she said, very difficult to prove. So the police, just don't want to get involved. And another thing that happens is that often you're very stressed, when you go in. And this is one of the points that Stacy, who's going to be presenting it, has made, is that, in the first 5 minutes, the police are evaluating your credibility to try and figure out, if you're okay, or if you're lying, or if you're, mentally ill. And she makes the point that the police are dealing with mentally ill people all the time. So you come in there and you're all over the place or something. Well, there's another mentally ill person. And plus, it's important to understand what's a crime and what's not a crime, because, sociopaths lie like crazy. Well, lying isn't necessarily a crime,
Right.
And then, of course, what happens is that if you've been given money to somebody, and I had this experience myself, it's like, well, why didn't you stop? And why did you keep doing it? So they don't necessarily have an understanding of the trauma bond that's involved. So, there's a lot of reasons of why the police, may not, go along. And plus, they also have the experience of many, many people, particularly women, who file for restraining orders and then take the guy back.
Right.
So there's all kinds of reasons, why it might be difficult, for the police to actually believe you. So in this webinar, we're addressing that.
And how are those webinars doing? Are you getting a lot of people involved, or
yeah, well, they're there all the time. People can take them whenever they want, and yeah, we've been doing it for years, so I guess hundreds of them, people have taken. So yeah.
If you were to think of the main lesson or the main advice you would give somebody going into a relationship, what would that be?
Here's how you protect yourself from sociopaths. First, you have to know that they exist. And believe it or not, that's the hardest part. I mean, that's most of what I do is to try and, educate people that these folks are out there. So first, you have to know that they exist. Second, you need to know the warning signs. And as I said, you want to see that whole pattern. One or two doesn't make someone a sociopath. You want to see the whole thing. The third and most important part is to trust your intuition. Okay, because your intuition will warn you. That's what it's designed to do. Our intuition is designed to warn us about predators. So you'll get a bad feeling, something won't be right. You'll just, it just will seem off. The hair on the back of your neck stands up. Whatever the warning is, you need to trust that, because that's actually the best warning that you'll have that somebody is dangerous.
And in your case, what happened to him? Is he still out and about doing this, or did he do any jail time or anything like that?
Well, talking about police not taking you seriously, I actually made contact with some of the other women that he had swindled, and a few months after I left him, I called this woman because I had seen her name in all these documents, and found her phone number, and I called her up and I said, I'm Donna Andersen. I'm James Montgomery's wife, and I'd like to suggest that you stop giving him money. And she says, it's too late. I already gave him $92,000.
Wow.
Right. While he's taking all the money from me, he's taking that from her. So, but she was a lot sharper than I was, and she had already caught on that he was a con artist and reported him to the FBI. And then, once we started talking, and then the guy that we were in business with the Titanic, he had a friend who was an FBI agent. So we gathered up all the documentation. By this time, she and I are best friends, trying to, snag him. And so we presented all this information to the FBI. The FBI interviewed not only the two of us, but the other people that we referred them to. They took it to the U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, and he declined to prosecute. Essentially, they were wondering about the motivation of the witnesses. So they didn't take it seriously. So he actually went off. He actually left the country. He was originally from Australia. He left the country, shortly after I left him. And but once I launched Love Fraud, I did hear from other women who he tried to hook up with. And luckily they found Love Fraud and dumped him. So as far as I did get a judgment against him. I served it, and he, declared bankruptcy. So I never got any of the money back. And he actually passed on a few years ago. So he's not tormenting people anymore.
That's good, though. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, you made a lot of money. That's for sure. Do you know at all? I mean, and I know we talked about this earlier, but do you know at all what he did with the money?
Oh, he just blew it. It's gone. I mean, I had a judgment for everything that was taken from me, plus
Mhm.
$1 million punitive damages. I mean, who gets punitive damages in a divorce? That never happens.
Mhm.
And I mean, I tried, I looked, I had international search agents, I had all kinds of stuff. He just blew through it. It's gone.
That's incredible. Well, you do great work, and it's a lesson hard learned. But that's what they say. Sometimes you have to fall, down in order to pick yourself up and figure out what's next for you. Did you ever expect, like growing up? We're just gonna say this and just throw it out there. Did you ever expect growing up that you were going to be doing this type of work?
Oh, absolutely not. No idea. No. In fact, I was a journalist and then a commercial writer, and people would say to me, "So, say, you want to write a book?" I'm like, "No, that's too much work. I don't want to do that." And I never ever dreamed that this would happen. And so it's like, we don't like to give sociopaths credit for anything, but
Right.
he did give me a mission in life.
Hmm.
And I find it to be very fulfilling. I do help people. People are grateful for Love Fraud, and it's for the consultations and the webinars, and so it makes you feel good.
Well, I was going to say, what is it like for you to help someone?
It's very satisfying.
Hmm.
And of course, one of the things also is that I encourage people that recovery is possible. I mean, I'm remarried. We just celebrated our 18th wedding anniversary, and the husband that I have now is the one I always wanted. And so you can recover from this, and that's what I want people to understand, is that it doesn't mean you're totally damaged goods. If you work on your recovery, you can pick your life up, and it could be better than ever.
What's next for you?
Well, we're talking about doing a podcast,
Okay.
because I have so many stories, and I mean, you can't make this stuff up. I mean,
Right.
it's just unbelievable. So that's what we're looking at next.
Fantastic. How can people find you?
Well, lovefraud.com, that's the best place to go, and all the services are there, all the information is there, so that would be a place to start.
Absolutely. I want to thank you for coming on again.
Charlotte, it was my pleasure. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the
It is
opportunity.
always so fascinating to have you on and listen to these stories because I mean, this happens all the time and people just don't realize it.
That's true. It really is.
So hopefully we help some people tonight.
Yep.
That's what my goal is. All right. Well, thank you very much, and I hope you have the rest great evening.
Okay. Thank you, Charlotte. I appreciate it.
And we'll get you back on sometime. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Bye bye. Okay, guys. Well, it's always informative to have her on, and those like those things she talked about earlier. That's what you look out for. And like I said, I've known some sociopaths over the years. I've been around a while, and they can be very, very convincing and controlling. They really can. Okay, now here we go. Here comes this name thing. Okay, tomorrow's guest is author Leslie Giglieri. Hopefully, I got the name right. Giglieri. So Giglieri is what I got out of it. So we know how much I screw names, so we're going to find out tomorrow. Leslie has written a book about a teenage boy who killed his family, but his mother is still a huge backer of him. If you know what I mean, as far as what he did, the mother's love, right? That whole thing. So this is what we're going to be talking about tomorrow. This is a true story. And being the crime court reporter that I am, this kind of thing lights me up. I've read the book. It's a fascinating book, and so she's going to be with us tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m. Pacific, and right here. And so we're going to have her on, Leslie Giglieri. Hope I got the name right. Okay. That being said, if you like the show, share it with 5 people. If you hated the show, share it with 5 of your enemies. We are equal opportunity here at California Haunts Radio. If you're watching from Facebook and you like what you heard, please be sure to hit that like button and follow if you haven't done that already. YouTube, here I'm going to point at that little ghost. There he is right there. The magnifying glass and the Sherlock Holmes hat. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe. And if you like what you see, please hit that like button because we're always looking for likes, right? Always looking. And you can find us at youtube.com/ampersand California Haunts Radio. Just like you could Google California Haunts on California Haunts on Facebook, and bazillion pages come up. So you can pick whatever page you want to be on, because I announce the shows on all those pages. TikTok, we are California Haunts. It's all lowercase. If you'd like to find us on Instagram, it's under Ghosty Gal. That's all lowercase. We are also on Twitter, and that's under Cal Haunts. And we are over at Twitch, and I believe that's under Cal Haunts, I think. I'm not positive about Twitch. But anyway, I want to thank you all for coming today. I really appreciate it. I'm going to show you some of her books. She's authored quite a few books, but I'm going to show you some of her books, show you how to get a hold of her. She's even got a YouTube channel, which she forgot to mention, but it's okay. We'll do it for her. And then I'm going to sign off, all right? And I'll see you guys tomorrow at 6 p.m. Pacific, or 6:30 p.m. Pacific. I'm losing my mind, I'm telling you. So here we go, and here's her information. Websites, youtube.com/C/capital Love Fraud Lessons. And then you've got lovefraud.com, education at lovefraud.com. Books, Senior Sociopaths. And you've got Red Flags of Love Fraud and Love Fraud. And like I said, there are other books that she has available as well. Be sure to check out her website for information and, her get-togethers to talk about this stuff. And you can get the books at Amazon.com. Alrighty, guys, I'll see you tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. We're going to talk about teen murder, and that is with Leslie Giglieri. See you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day.